Hey, and thanks for watching our tutorial about our SAML Single Sign-On app with OneLogin and just-in-time provisioning. Just-in-time provisioning means we'll use values from the SAML response that we get from OneLogin to create and update your users in the Atlassian application. We'll start off in our app in Jira for this tutorial. Then move over to OneLogin to do all the SAML configuration on the OneLogin side, and then move back to our Jira app to finish off the configuration and obviously test it afterwards as well. Alright, let's move over to Jira then. You'll actually see this demo Jira is relatively plain. There's only the admin user, no other. So we'll see that the user that we are going to log in is also going to get created by our plugin. So let's go to SAML Single Sign-On, and once we go there for the first time, we'll see our welcome wizard. What we want to do here is add a new identity provider, and I'm going to select OneLogin here. So by doing that, the plugin already knows the identity provider and a lot of it tweaks and settings that it needs to apply for that one. You also see the documentation links to our step-by-step guides, and let's go next here. And please copy the base URL of your instance, because that is what we'll need now on the OneLogin side to complete the setup. So let's move over to OneLogin. Right, let's go to Administration, Applications, and then we want to add a new app here. That gives us the OneLogin catalog. Let's type resolution here. We already have a catalog app in OneLogin. That makes it relatively easy to do the setup, because we can apply a lot of pre-configurations here as well. So let's select that. Let's adjust the display name. Use a good name here, because that's the name that people or your users will see in their dashboard. And maybe also replace the app icon to something that makes more sense to your users. So see a demo Jira, let's save that. Let's go to configuration, and here we need the base URL. Remove the HTTPS part, we only need the hostname part here. Let's say save. Right, the next thing I'm going to show you, just that you've seen it, is the parameters here. Essentially, to use just-in-time provisioning, where we use the SAML response that we get from OneLogin to create and update users in Jira, we need to configure OneLogin to send us those additional informations. And this is done by configuring additional attributes to be sent in the SAML response. And that's what's done here. It's already done with our catalog app, so there's nothing you need to adjust or do manually, but I just wanted you to know. So we sent the name ID, which is typically the username, and that's mapped to the email in OneLogin. And then we also add an attribute called email, first name and last name, and that contains again the email, again the first name and the last name from OneLogin. And on the left side, these are the SAML attributes that we see in our SAML response. We'll take those values and use them to create and update users in the Jira application. Also, one more thing here. If I look at access, currently all users that are in the default role will have access to this application and authenticate via SAML. So if you have a more complex OneLogin setup, then you may want to choose the exact role here that applies to your Jira or Confluence users and configure it from that way. But we leave it as default here because, as you can see in users here, we only have this here demo Jira user that is in that default policy. So that user will be allowed to actually use this SAML integration. Right, that's pretty much everything we need to do on OneLogin. There's one last thing. This is the SAML metadata. Let's right-click that and copy link address. The SAML metadata contains a lot of information about the identity provider. So instead of copying and pasting that into our plugin, the easiest way is to use that URL and import it in our plugin side, since the plugin supports all the SAML metadata there is. It also helps on an ongoing basis if we do this via URL, because then we can monitor that URL for changes. For example, if a certificate expires and gets exchanged, then we can monitor that on an ongoing basis and do that automatically in our plugin. But that's all we have to do on the OneLogin side, so let's go back to the plugin now. Click Next here. And here you see the plugin already wants the metadata URL to import it. If your Jira instance doesn't have direct internet access, so you can't use the URL here, then you could have clicked the link in OneLogin to download the XML file, and you have the choice here to upload that XML file. But the URL, if you have the option, is better because, like I said, we can actually monitor it and apply changes automatically. So let's do import here. Import was successful. Let's go to next. Right. Here the plugin actually asks us if the usernames on OneLogin are the same as in the Atlassian application. In our tutorial that will be the case. We actually use the username from OneLogin to create and update the user, so there's nothing we have to change here. If that's not your situation, then you could adjust that quite a bit by applying regular expressions, using different attributes, etc. So there's a lot of things that you can do to do changes or apply changes or use different values for the username. So if that's something you need, then please reach out to our support and we can help you identify what is the best setup for you. So let's go to next here then. And here the plugin asks about user creation update. So do we want to use any of our provisioning features? And the answer is yes. And what we want to use is the update from SAML attributes, which is the just-in-time provisioning. And then we can apply a couple more settings here. We want to create new users in the Jira internal directory. Here it asks us in the full name attribute, it asks us which values from the SAML response it should take to create the full name, and that's the first name and last name. That's already pre-populated with what we have in our catalog app, and it also wants to know where to find the email. That's also the email attribute. Let's also add every user into a default group. Let's take the Jira software users for that every newly created user has access to Jira. But there's a couple more settings that you could apply which are not really part of this tutorial. Again, if you have a slightly different situation and don't find a good answer in our tutorials here, then reach out to us, because more likely than not, there is a setting that helps you get this resolved. So let's say save and next now. That's essentially all we have to do for the configuration part. Now we can actually start and test our settings. So I'm going to click Start here. That creates what we call an Authentication Tracker and a special link for that. So I'm going to copy that link as well. And now I move over to an incognito window. That will redirect us to OneLogin, do the authentication, hopefully create the user and log us in. And then we can go back to this window to see all the results and a lot of the log messages around it. So let's just quickly do that. Now we should get redirected to OneLogin. And there we are. So let me continue. And now we go back into Jira, and you see we're already in the first start wizard as the CR local 1 at resolution user. That means the plugin has just created that user during the login and also successfully established a session for us to be there. Let's just close this and go back to our plugin side. And here you can actually see the tracker has a status success, so it was successful. The user ID logged in is CR local 1, and if I scroll down a little bit, you see a lot of debug messages, what we extracted from the SAML response. If I go a bit further down, the SAML request and the SAML response itself. the HTTP requests. So a lot of troubleshooting data that can be very useful if this is not successful. And should you run into any trouble here, you have the contact support button at the bottom of this wizard page. So with that you can open a support case straight in our Jira Service Management, and you can also attach this tracker to it so that we get all the information that we may need to help you straight away just with one click. Also, you can download the tracker, then you have the tracker as a JSON file with a bit more information as well. So you could attach that to an existing support case too if you already have one with us. But since this has been a success, there's nothing more for us to do. Let's go to next, which brings us to the last screen of the tracker to turn on redirection. Essentially, nothing we have done so far has interfered with users' logins. So they still got their username password prompt, and we had this special URL in the tracker to get redirected and test things. If I now turn on enable SSO redirect here and say save and close, that's going to change. So from now on, users will get redirected to the identity provider for authentication and turn back. If that's not what you want, you can also leave it unchecked, say save and close, and then always come back later to the plugin settings, go to redirection, and turn on the SSO redirect during a maintenance window after you informed your users, for example. So, thanks for watching. That essentially concludes this tutorial. I hope you found it useful. Really remember, we're here for you. We're here to help. So please reach out to our support if you run into any trouble or have any questions. Open a ticket in our support system, or schedule a free screen share session with us where we can actually help you interactively to configure your system or to answer some more complex questions, give you some best practice advice. That's really what we're here for, and we love to help. Thanks a lot.